Hi there, welcome to the refurbishment of this lovely old Keil Kraft Bantam from the 1950s. Now this is a lovely model. Originally when it first came out it was a 39-inch wingspan free flight model. This one has been built obviously from a set of plans and it's a 60-inch wingspan, so they just scaled it up. Now when I got this, I was given this recently, it had only the rudder, just a single channel. I've added an elevator to it. I've completely stripped it and done quite a lot of work. Hopefully you've seen the series leading up to this point. And now, I'm really excited because this is more or less, I think this is going to be the last video before we get this bird to the airfield and see how it flies, maybe do some trim flights first. I'll have to have a think about that. But there's very little to do now to get this ready. And I'm really pleased with how it's gone, and the covering, which is laminating film and tissue, has gone on really nice. If I put that just to one side somewhere safe, what I need to do now is I need to actually fit the rudder. This is the original rudder and I've made a replacement. We need to get the linkages in and the electronics, and we need to get the engine mounted in the front, which is kind of easy enough. So, and we need to put in the dowels, which I've got here for the wing bands. But anyway, let's have a closer look at what I'm going to do with the rudder, because it's a bit strange at the moment. There's just a hole there. So I'll show you how that's going to work, and we'll talk about getting those servos in. Right, well, as I said, at the moment we've just got this hole here where the rudder is going to go. This is such a flimsy structure, this. Now the original rudder fitted in there, and what it did is it went into a piece of balsa that was glued into here. So I'm going to replicate that, and I've already cut out a couple of bits of 1/8 balsa, and actually I'll put some hinges in as well. Now I'm going to be doing this, the hinges and the covering of this in exactly the same way as I did with the rest of the plane, and also the hinges on the elevator. And essentially what happens is that will be hinged, and we will glue this piece of balsa in here, and then it will just work like that. So what we'll do is I'm going to cover this in a minute with tissue. I'm just going to use water-based polyurethane and tissue and brush it on, and then I will hinge this together. I'm going to probably peg the hinges or glue them. I'll have to have a think about that, and then we can then glue this piece with some CA into place like that, and finish it off with perhaps just a little bit of tissue to hide the join. So I'll start to get this pulled together. And the other thing is that I've got a couple of places here where the servos go. One for the rudder, and there's one on this side just here which will do the elevator. So what I will do is I'll get these cut out, and I'll use my little trim iron just to push down the tissue and the laminating film onto the balsa edges, so that that's nice and neat. Right, now I've started doing the tissue, and you can see I've got the rudder here, and I've just put that on. I'm just waiting for it to go off before I trim it. So that is on one side, and I've got the bar somewhere which has now gone missing. Oh, here it is. And I'm going to do that once I've done the rudder. I've got the hinge slots cut in, which I just put in with a scalpel, and I'm using the small Dubro hinges like I used on the rudder, and these just slot in there. And the reason I'm waiting for the rudder to get done is so that I can put these hinges in like this, and then marry this up against the rudder, and reacquaint myself with the slots, because once I've got the tissue on, I'll be covering the slots for these. So that's going to have to wait for a little bit. And I thought, while that's going off, we can get rid of that. I've just found the Keil I'd forgotten about, so we need to put that on the tailplane as well. I'm pointing over here because the tailplane's just off camera. Now what I'm going to do is fit these servos now while I'm waiting for that. And these are the servos that I'm using. They're 3.5 gram servos, and they're quite cheap, but I've used them before and I found them really, really reliable. So what I'm going to do is, this is where the servo's going. In fact, let me just move this a little bit so we can get a better look at this. I'll tell you what, I'll move all this stuff and zoom the camera in. Right, well, when I covered this, I literally went straight over these holes where the servos are going to go with both the laminating film and the tissue. So just ignoring that they were there. And what I'm going to do now is just put a bit of a cut down the middle, like that. I'm then going to come out from the corners, and then what we can do is we can just fold this in and stick it down, because the tissue is attached to the laminating film, and the laminating film, when we heat it up, we can stick it. And I'm just using this, it's a Prolux trim iron. Really like it. It's really nice for these kind of little jobs. Am I still in camera there? Yep. And what we can do is just fold that in and stick it like that. We have to be careful with this because it's got, as you can see, it's got quite a sharp point on it. So if it slips out, we could put a hole in the tissue, but hopefully not. We'll be careful. Then we can use the top surface there like that. And now, I just saw the foot move in this. I think it wants tightening up a little bit, but it'll be fine. So now we can put the servo in there and screw it in. So I'll get that done on the other side, and then we can fit both the servos. Now, I just say with these servos, rather than connecting them to an extension cable, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut the cable. I'm going to solder on some longer thin cable, and then I'm going to run that up the fuselage, and I'll put this end on the other end. So I'm going to make my own extensions. Rather than having 2 plug sockets, I'd rather solder it and make sure that it's done nicely. This is the cable I'm using. There we go. Actually, one thing I should say, that these servos are going to go in here quite a long way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in just a little bit of tissue on this bottom surface before I put the servos in, because it won't cover all of this and we'll end up with a glaring white shelf if we're not careful. So just a thin piece of tissue while I'm using the polyurethane, and just give it a bit of polyurethane to stick it on, and that will be fine. Right, time for a quick update. I've got the rudder hinged and on the mounting plate, and you can see I've just pegged the hinges, as I said, with just a little bit of 2mm toothpick. I set the depth stop so I didn't drill through the tissue on the bottom side, just on this side, bottom side when I was drilling it, that is. And so I've knocked those pegs in, and I'm just going to put a little bit of CA on those in a minute. Some really thin CA to wick through, hold it really secure. I mean, it is really secure. And then I'm going to use my hole punch, just as I did when we did the elevator, and I'm just going to put a little circle of tissue on each one, just to hide those. Once that's done, we can then put this in place like that, and we can CA this bar in. Yeah, that's in camera, is it? Yeah, we can CA this bar in, and I'll put on just a little bit of tissue to hide the seam, and then that will operate nicely, and we can connect it up to this servo. Now, talking of servos, I've been doing the servo extension leads, and this is the one that I started to do, and I was a bit concerned at the thickness of the wire, and I'm just realising I haven't got the wire thicknesses with me. So that was the thickness of the wire that I was using, and it's quite thin and it's quite a long run. It works fine, but it just made me feel a little bit nervous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one for the elevator, And for the rudder, which I'm much more concerned about being operative, I'm using 26 gauge, and that is heavier, and hopefully that definitely won't give me any issues. I've tested them both and they both work fine, but I'm going to put the thicker wire on the rudder because that's the one I really don't want to lose. If I lose the elevator, or it's not quite as well, it's not as dire with a model like this. But it'll be a good test to see if this does work, to be honest. So we'll see, only time will tell on that. And the final thing to show you is I'm about to mount the engine as well. And the engine goes on here like this, obviously, but there's a hole there for a little bit of flexible tube. This is how it came to me, and that flexible tube goes on there, goes through and out here. So if I turn that round, you can see. Now you could have it just right up against there, but it's in the back of the Keil, you won't be able to choke it, and it will be sucking in all the exhaust that comes straight out. So at least if that comes through, you'll get clean air, you can put your finger over it to choke it, or cleaner air anyway. Now the problem is, how the heck do you get a piece of bendy pipe like this in there and then round the corner to come out here? Well, I'll show you how. It's actually quite simple. We just thread something through like this, and there we go, and then we just slide this down the plastic pipe like this. And sorry if my hands are in the shot, I'm just pushing that in. There we go. And then all we do is we slide that down, and now we can see it appearing just in the hole here. And I just need, this is going to be a little bit fiddly, but I just need to pull this through. And okay, well that was a bit fiddly, and it didn't go quite as easy the second time as it did the first time, but I ended up just getting hold of it and pulling it through. But you can see the process of doing that anyway. So now we can get the engine mounted, we can get that pushed into there, and look at that, will work perfectly. Now this might restrict the air intake just a little bit, and if it does, I don't really mind, because that's how this engine was set up originally on this model, and it worked fine from what I understand. And this is quite a powerful engine, so if it's reduced a little bit in power, it's probably a good thing. So anyway, I'll get on, get the servos in, get this mounted, and we're almost on the home straight. Right, I thought we'd have a quick look at the servo there. You can see it's really snug in the side of the fuselage. The cable goes up a tube there, up the fuselage. We did that way back before we did the covering, and it appears up the top here, if I can just move the fuselage, there we go, and into the cockpit. It's a really nice easy slide. I've perhaps made the lead a little bit longer than necessary, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So I will get on now and get the servo in the other side. Right, well, I've been really cracking on with this, and there's very little to do now. Just have a quick recap, and actually one of the jobs I have got to do is I keep seeing blue paint on the landing gear from the original finish. It's all over the place. I keep thinking I need to get some wire wool on that just to get rid of that, but I will do at some point. But going from the front, we've got the engine in, and we've got the fuel pipe coming out. I've got the fuel tank holes ready to attach the fuel tank onto there, and that will go on there quite nicely. I've got the radio gear in. You can see I've got the switch. Is that showing up? Yeah, we've got the switch there, and I've got the transmitter tucked in there, and if I just take out that bit of foam, we can see the battery is right up the front here. A lot of decisions have been made, a lot of preparation has been done for this setting up, and you'll need to go back to the previous videos to see those decisions and how we came to those. So we've got the radio in, we've got the leads coming up from the servos, and if we go towards the back, we can see I've got the rudder in. Haven't got the horn on it yet. got the servos in, and we've also got the dowels, 1, 2, 3, for banding on the wings and the tail there. Now the only thing that I've got left to do now is to sort out the controls. Like I said, we've got the 2 servos in, you can see there and there, and all I need to do is make up a couple of linkages, and I've got some control horns that I'm just going to screw onto there like that, and I'm going to use these black ones. They just look a lot better. I don't like the colour of these. These came with the servos. They never used to be that colour. I might have some white ones somewhere, so I might try and sort those out. Now for the connections, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up something with a Z-bend. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll zoom in on this and we'll have a look. So I'm going to have a Z-bend for the servo. I'm then going to silver solder into this threaded connector here, and then I'm going to have a clevis which will go on the control horn on the surface, and I think that will work out quite nicely. Normally I would have a Z-bend on both ends of a thin piece of wire, but the control horns here have quite big holes in them, and you can't get control horns that I know about anyway. I mean, you must be able to, but with small holes. That's why I often make my own control horns out of carbon fibre or epoxy board. But this time I'm going to go with these plastic horns, so I'm just going to solder that on because that has a thicker connection. If I do a Z-bend and put it in there as is, that is going to be really sloppy, which is no good to anybody. So I'll get that done, and the blue paint off the undercarriage, and then we're done. Right, well, I am pleased to say, and a little bit relieved, that this is now finished. Well, at least it's airfield ready. It's time for us to take it to the airfield, and I think I'm going to give it some test glides and just see how it does before I let it free under power. But as I said, it's finished. We've got the rudder done there. We've got twin rates on the rudder just in case. We've got the elevator done again with twin rates or dual rates, and if I turn it round, you can see we've got the fuel tank on there, all ready to go. I have put a little bit of weight in the nose, and I don't know whether it shows there, but there is some brass that is just bolted or screwed across the back of the engine bearers, and I've had to put in about 100 grams of brass to get this to balance. And just turn it off, and I've balanced it because on the original plans there is no CG as far as I can remember. I can check, but I've done it at about 1/3, so I think that will be about right, and it doesn't want to be too far back. Now the overall weight of this is 1 kilo, which is heavier than I thought it would be. But we are talking about a 60-inch wingspan model. My sort of 49, 50-inch wingspan models are often about, my vintage ones are often about 700 grams. So I think this is fine. It's got quite a big wing area. And we have to remember that this was built and it was designed as a free flight kind of competition model. But I'm not going to be flying it like that. I'm going to be flying it a little bit more, well, it's going to be RC assist. So, you know, we're going to be able to keep it in the confines of the airfield, and I'm not going to be entering any competitions. But I am really pleased to get this finished, and you can see I've got the Keil on here. Just turn it round. There we go. So, as I said, really pleased to get this finished, and I can't wait now to to actually have a decent day to be able to test glide this and just see how it performs. And it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if we have to do a little bit of trim to the tail or tailplane or the wings, or maybe even it wouldn't surprise me actually if we need to put in a little bit of down thrust, because there isn't any at the moment. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and seen me pulling this together. You'll probably notice the pilot hasn't earned his keep. He's quite heavy, and having put some weight in the nose, I didn't then want to put some weight back here. So we'll see about that. I'll see if I can get a really nice light pilot, because it'd be good to get a pilot in there. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and please come back, see how we get on with this at the airfield. Thanks very much.